Hello super friends and welcome to DC TV Talk. This is the show where we talk all things Supergirl, The Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, Arrow and Black Lightning. And in today's video we're going to be discussing a potential new villain coming to Supergirl next season in Season 4 called Manchester Black, so let's discuss. So now that we are heading into the back season of Supergirl and also in terms of all the other shows they have now finished, we are starting to get all the casting calls and all the different casting rumours regarding upcoming new characters that are going to be introduced in the next seasons. And we've been getting them for Arrow, we've been getting them for Flash, we've got now one for Supergirl, and some of them are just pretty average, like the ones for Arrow, except for one that came out today, but a lot of the Arrowverse, or the Arrow ones have been quite boring, to be honest. The Flash one pretty much confirms Cicada as the villain, but this one for Supergirl definitely hints at the idea of the villain Manchester Black coming to the show. Now, there is a description that is looking for a character called Chester Green, who, although there has never been a character in DC Comics called Chester Green, you can kind of transfer that to Manchester Black. And they are looking for a British actor between 20 and 30, and they are going to be described as someone with a dark background and heavy burden on his shoulders, but who enters into battles with much charm and could take a sword to a shooting and nevertheless end up being victorious. So basically he's a badass, and that is amazing. Now, I think that description sounds really cool and a really physical threat for Supergirl, which is something that I don't think the villains of the show has ever really had. They've never really had like a physical, formidable fighter on Supergirl, because the action on Supergirl, especially the fight scenes, they're always very, it's always on wires and it's always attached, and I don't really like that on Supergirl. It's one of the things I don't really like, so if we get a villain like this, who, like you say, can take a sword to a shootout and still come out victorious, that's going to be an incredibly physical, choreographed type action scene, which is something that Supergirl's severely lacking. So Manchester Black in the comics was a vigilante who led a crime-fighting team called the Elite, and he was basically a kind of a anonymous result. Like, nobody really knew anything about him. Everyone kind of knew he was from England because he has a very strong English accent and has a Union Jack tattoo. But not a lot is known about him, which is quite interesting, and a lot of people, assume based on his first name that he's from Manchester in England. And basically what you can kind of assume about his character is that he was perhaps abused by his parents growing up, and he began to grow a hatred for people in higher power. And what that means is kind of people who think they are better than they are, and they can kind of control people and abuse people just because they are of a higher sort of moral concept. And that is something that drives Manchester Black to do the things that he does. And this basically turned him, as this hatred grew and as his days of vigilantism kind of went on, he turned from a simple vigilante into a big DC villain. And it's been quite an interesting story for him. He also seems to have, in the comics, African and Korean heritage, although it seems like they're probably dropping that for the show, as they were looking... they don't actually mention ethnicity in the casting call, I don't believe. So they could bring in that side of it, or they might just go for a white British actor, who knows. But based on that backstory, like you said, in the casting call, it does say they're looking for someone with a dark backstory, with a burden. That sounds very similar to that of Manchester Black's backstory, so that lines up there. So could we see the Elite show up? Now, the Elite were the crime-fighting team who he had and who he led. And this was actually made up with, I think, 3 other members, as far as I remember. And this was actually a really cool idea. Now, this is something that you would definitely like to see implemented on Arrow. Like, this is something I could see Arrow doing. But it'd be interesting for Supergirl to do it, to actually take these, like, anti-heroes and make this anti-hero team almost like a Suicide Squad type thing for Supergirl. And, that means you have Manchester Black potentially as the main villain, and then to follow that up with these 3 other side villains to help him along the way, and they can be like, the main villains of the season. I think that'd be really cool. Seems like Arrow is also actually doing that next season in terms of Ricardo Diaz and the Longbow Hunters, at least that's what I see anyway. Also, like I said, it'd be like a really cool version of the Suicide Squad to actually bring onto Supergirl. And also, Manchester Black was actually a member of the Suicide Squad in the comics for a little while, so that kind of lines up there. And like I said, I just think the physical threat that Manchester Black would be, using like a sword to actually fight would be really cool. And this would provide like this really interesting challenge for Supergirl. I'd love to see him go up against Guardian, because obviously Guardian's a lot more of a physical fighter, so I'd love to see that. And it'd be really cool. I think this character sounds great, and there's so many good like British TV actors they could bring over to play him. I haven't got a nailed down casting just yet, but hopefully we'll find out fairly soon, maybe around Comic-Con time, as to who will be playing this role. And I think it sounds really, really exciting. So what do you guys think about Manchester Black coming to Supergirl in Season 4? Like I said, I think this character seems really awesome. I think he seems like just different type of villain that we'd never normally get on Supergirl. Supergirl's never exactly been the strongest when it comes to villains. You know, it only really got good in Season 3 with Rain, who has been a great villain overall. But I think if they want to keep that consistency going, we need to get a bit more fresh villains, something that's a bit different, that's going to challenge Supergirl in a way she's never been challenged before. And doing that with a really physical threat of a villain like Manchester Black is something that could be very interesting and different for the show, and something that I think would be interesting for us viewers to see, and see a different side to Supergirl. Perhaps she'd have to turn to a bit more like a, you know, violent and gritty kind of fighting style in order to take on this villain, which again keeps the show fresh and definitely keeps it interesting. Also, if you like this video and you want to see more of my type of content, make sure you subscribe. And if you want to see the more content that I make here, if you like the content I make here, make sure you go check out my podcast, which is called Honor Thy Podcast. It is a weekly DCTV Arrowverse podcast where I do with my good friend Mule Kick Media, where we discuss all of the week's episodes, and it's going to be a really fun time. I mean, we've been doing the episode for about 5 weeks now, and it's just a really fun podcast. So if you like the content I make here, make sure you go check that out. Link is in the description box below. So, thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a like. It'll help me out a lot. And share this video with anyone and everyone you know who loves DC TV, and get them to join the community. And as always, guys, please subscribe for all of your latest content on Supergirl, The Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, Arrow, and Black Lightning. And with all that said, guys, I hope to see you again in my next video.